All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to kind of walk through just a few housekeeping things before I turn the reins over to our friend Brady Josephson. Real quick, just show you the results of that poll. We asked, how familiar are you with Google AdWords? About a quarter of you said you've never heard of it. Half of you said you've heard of it, but you don't use it. Some people use it occasionally, and 15% of people said they actively use it. So kind of interesting spread there, but it tells us that most people are in the right place because the fundamental prospect of what we do at NextAfter is optimization. Optimization is one of the ways we optimize is by getting the best results out of the least resources possible. And if I asked another poll about who has tons of resources, not many of you might raise their hands. So Google AdWords is a great way to do that. We're going to explore that today. Wanted to just walk through a few quick housekeeping things. Number one, people ask this a lot. We will make a video recording of the slides available, and we'll send that out as soon as it finishes processing, so give us just a few minutes. But we will record this presentation on video and send it out to you guys. Number two, we'll send out links to all the experiments and every additional resources, downloads, things like that afterwards. It'll all be in one email, and we receive that from our team. We want your questions. If you notice in the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a little section there for questions. We've already gotten a couple, but if you have questions, we'll answer them all in a Q&A at the end of the broadcast, so please submit your questions right there. If it's a technical issue, we'll try to answer it right away, but we'll get to those at the very end. Like we said, there's this little box. You can see it outlined right there. Today, I'm really excited to introduce a good friend, a guy who's become a good friend over the last year, Brady Josephson. Brady lives in the Great White North, Canada, and he's a nonprofit strategist. He's a marketer, professor, writer. He's founded Shift, which helps nonprofits do more, raise more money. It's a marketing agency and also an online advertising agency for nonprofits called Nonprofit Supply Company. You've probably read a lot of his stuff. He's really a profound content marketer and writer. But Brady is going to talk to us today about something that we've both found in our work, and he's become an expert on. We're always trying to equip you with access to experts. So Brady is going to talk about how we can grow your donations, grow your fundraising revenue without spending any money, which I'm not sure if that sounds as good to you as it does to me, but I think that's something that we're all looking for. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the reins over to Brady Josephson, and we'll hear from him. Brady.
Thanks, Jeff. Let me just pull up my slides here. All right. Well, thanks for having me. And how to raise money without spending any dime in a tested, proven strategy. So I have a little bit to live up to, and hopefully I can do it. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Growing your donations without spending a dime. I'm going to start with a quick story, but just on that poll, that was really great to see. My experience has been that a lot of organizations and people, marketers and fundraisers, either don't know about the Google Ad Grant or maybe have it and barely use it. And that's one of the reasons why we started Nonprofit Supply Co. And myself, when I was a development director and when I was a marketing director, we had it and barely used it, and then had it and I tried to use it and I just didn't have the time. So I think it's a common situation, and so hopefully today we'll show more of the value and then a little bit of our experience on this journey over 15 months. So let me start with this quick story here. We're in the middle of the World Series. I went to school in Chicago, although I'm not a Cubs fan. I'm a White Sox guy. But anyways, World Series is going on. So a quick story. I'm a baseball guy. I played a little baseball in college for a terrible college baseball team. My first year, we went 1-39. So we played 40 games, and we lost 39 of them. You have to be very bad and very unlucky and somewhat apathetic to lose 39 out of 40 games. It was a terrible experience. But we got a new coach in the next year. He was a young buck. He turned things around. He had a lot of great energy, and we started winning some games. But we still weren't very good, so we were playing behind a lot. And I remember him drilling in this idea or belief or strategy for us while we're playing from behind of saying, you have to get the tying run to the plate. And what he meant by that is if you're down 5 runs, trying to hit a home run, it doesn't do you any good, right? You need base runners, You need to score runs and put yourself in a position where the tying run can come to the plate and one swing of the bat could tie the game, prolong the game, or give you a chance to win. So playing from behind, that's your strategy. You have to give yourself a chance to win. You got to bring the tying run to the plate. I think this is a pretty good analogy for what we're talking about today, marketing and fundraising for charities, and particularly, how to drive traffic to websites. Because I think when it comes to marketing, we're kind of playing from behind in the fundraising in the nonprofit sector. We don't really have as much, often as much budget and time and expertise. But then also, especially when it comes to search marketing, people don't necessarily wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to try to find some place to give my money away to today, right? So we talked about the donor funnel and the upside down donor funnel. So that's already a challenge. And my experience working with primarily small and medium-sized nonprofits has been that we just don't get enough volume. We don't get enough volume in traffic. We don't get enough volume in emails. Once people actually get to the website or get to a landing page, the engagement rates and the interaction rates and the conversion rates are fine, but we're not getting that tying run to the plate. And so that's what today's going to be about today, or a different way to say it. If a nonprofit website exists and no one ever visits it, is it really any good, right? Playing off the tree falls in a forest. And this has been a lot of my experience. And now as we do consulting and we really want to get more into testing and optimization, and we've been learning a lot from Next After, one of the big struggles is we don't have high enough sample sizes to run really good tests, or it takes us months and months and months to test because we don't have that volume. So that's just a little intro today, and like I said, my background is primarily small, medium-sized nonprofits. We've been working as Shift for about 15 months. Before that, I was in technology and another digital agency before in fundraising and international development primarily. But we've been using the Google Ad Grant for all of our clients for months, so much so we saw so much success and opportunity that we started Nonprofit Supply Co., which exists right now to only get and manage Google Ad Grants for charities and nonprofits in North America. So a lot of the kind of research and methodology is coming out of that. You should also know that I'm not a super AdWords nerd. I've got certified this week and I've been learning a ton. So hopefully my level of knowledge and how I communicate today is going to be will resonate with you and where you're at. So just a little quick recap in the online fundraising and the value of traffic. So this is our framework. It's very similar, and I'll tie it into some of the things that Next After does. But you have to earn someone's attention, increase their motivation, and then reduce their friction. And these three variables, whether you're doing an online fundraising appeal, a direct mail appeal, or an event, these three things are the core components that need to be in place. And again, when we talk about getting that tying run to the plate and a lot of struggles that nonprofits have, earning that attention is often very tough, right? If you can get a donor down over and have a coffee and explain the mission, and then you can increase motivation. Friction, there's some fairly easy things that we can do in terms of making the transaction or the action easy, but earning attention is really freaking hard most of the time. But traffic does equal revenue. So now not in lockstep. This is a client of ours over 6 months, and we're just showing the correlation here, which isn't, again, 100%, but the correlation between as traffic goes up, revenue goes up. And the reason for that is this magical little equation that you may be familiar with via Next After. Just traffic times average gift times conversion equals revenue. So in theory, as long as conversion rate, which is the number of people who take a donation out of the number that visit the site, and average gift, how much people give, divided by the number of people that give, stay the same, then just by increasing traffic alone, in theory, will increase your revenue, right? So this is that magic equation where traffic equals revenue. The nice thing is that while we're talking a lot about donations, and we'll talk about acquiring emails and then using emails to actually lead into donations over the long term, but traffic is equal to more than just revenue. And so this is a different client of ours where they have volunteer opportunities, contact us, ways to get involved, meal sponsorship. They have other ways that people can get involved beyond just donating. And so we capture and track how many people fill out these forms. And you'll see the same type of correlation. Again, not 100%, but generally speaking, as traffic goes up, the donations and also these form completes or these actions that people take also go up. So then the question is, how can you drive more traffic to your website? And for us, at least in a cost-effective way, the Google Ad Grant provides a lot of opportunity. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So Nonprofit Supply Co., like I said, we just launched this in the summer. And we have found that about most organizations that have the Google Ad Grant spend about $330 a month out of the 10,000 that you can possibly get. We'll talk about Ad Grant specifics. Over the past 6 months, we've been able to spend about 5,000 for our clients. Now we have one that has Grants Pro, which they can spend up to 40,000, so that's kind of skewing it. But in the past 6 months, this is what we've done for the 12 clients that we do this for, where we've been able to spend $370,000 in search advertising, get 240,000 clicks, 9.5 million impressions, which we really don't care that much about. But we've been able to increase traffic to these websites 151% over the 6-month period compared to the year before. So we're going to use this as a basis, as this evolving methodology that is hopefully fairly simple. It does take a bit of time, right? So if it's not going to cost you money, it's going to cost you a bit of time. But hopefully you can walk away with some ideas and be able to get started along this path on your own. So today, a lot of our focus, again, we work with small and mediums. We charge kind of $100 to $400 a month to manage these things. So we're not talking about a ton of time that we're investing. So we're really focused on that 80-20. Like, what's the 20% that we can really do for clients to get them 80% of the way there? So today is maybe not AdWords 101, but it's not quite 201, so maybe it's 151. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. The slides and recording will be sent out, and I'll post as well on the Nonprofit Supply Co. site after this. And so today we're going to look at search marketing in the search world, the Google Ad Grant, quick AdWords overview, how to set it up, and then a few next level ideas and resources if we can get there. Then we'll have time for questions. So search marketing in a search world. One of my favorite games after a night out with friends or over dinner is to actually look at my own search history, because it's shocking how much I rely on Google to tell me what's going on. And I'm not alone. You, me, the world is using search engines as ways to find information. So Google processes 40,000 search queries every second and about 3.5 billion searches per day. We're talking tons and tons and tons of volume of people searching to find information that exists on the internet. And I won't quote more content stats. I'm sure you're well familiar. A couple just funny things that people use search for, and then animator put a couple cartoons next to these. But squirrels are the devil's oven mitts. Someone's searching for that. Tomorrow I will scald myself with tea. I don't know why they're pre-planning tomorrow. That's my favorite part about the tea one. And never put jam on a magnet. Everyone knows that. I don't know why this person would have to actually Google that. But we live in this weird search world, and in this world, Google is king. So their market share when it comes to search is, upwards of 90% back in April, and so much so that people will say, "Oh, just Google it," and actually use another search engine, right? Google is king, and so there is value in Bing and Yahoo primarily. But today we're just talking exclusively about Google, largely because of that Google Ad Grant. But the search concepts would apply to other search engines as well. So search marketing, this term kind of encompasses both SEO, which is search engine optimization. That's where you earn it, and the pay-per-click or PPC, and that's where you kind of buy it. So when we use that term search marketing, that's what we're talking about. There's value on each side for sure. Search engine optimization, that's where kind of your content and the things you produce, the things that get shared, allow people to better find content. So you can create content, you can write and put in keywords, you can do backlinking, you can have an active presence on social media. There's all kinds of things that you can do kind of in content production and communications to increase your kind of SEO search ranking. Or on the other side, you can just kind of buy it. And often, a combination is good. But what's nice about pay-per-click is you can control a lot more. Who's going to see what content and when. So when it comes to marketing and advertising, there's a lot more control in the pay-per-click side, which is generally good for marketers. This is just a quick look at 4 of our clients in their Google Analytics over, I think this is a 12-month period. And I'm sure your analytics are somewhat similar, but organic and paid search are often the biggest or near the biggest driver of traffic for every single client that we've worked with. Sometimes upwards of 70%. And that's not just because of the Google Ad Grant, although that can play a big part once we get in there. But this is how people are often finding information. So when we talk about the donor journey, particularly say higher up in the funnel in the discovery phase, search marketing, both paid and organic, or PPC and SEO, are hugely important to helping donors find your organization and your content, which again is what we're here to talk about today. I kind of went over the good and the bad, so we won't spend too much time there. I think we're going to have to go pretty quick, and I want to leave some time for questions. But here's just an example of a PPC strategy, or a pay-per-click strategy. So type in volunteer for Vancouver, and this is a client of ours, First United. So they're third in the list, up there with World Vision and YWCA. So that's what our ad does, and we'll kind of break down this example of volunteer in the page and some of how it works. But there we are. We're kind of showing up third, which is fantastic. If we were resigned to an SEO alone strategy, this is what it looks like. Not on the page, right? Can't find it. But what you may not see is this is page 10, and our client First United has still not shown up. So we definitely need to work on the SEO side of things. But just by using the Google Ad Grant, we're showing up third for a pretty important keyword like volunteer in Vancouver, as opposed to SEO alone, where they wouldn't even show up until page 10 and beyond. I just gave up because I didn't know if we'd ever show up. And that's what this little graphic is getting at. This is kind of user behavior. I don't have statistics to prove this, but I'm sure you do this too. You know, page 1, maybe 2, 3, beyond that you're getting real desperate, and then after page 8, God help you, what are you still doing here? Right? That's how a lot of people use Google when they search. So a Google Ad Grant, where you get these free dollars that allow you to participate in a PPC strategy, can kind of help you overcome a lot of those SEO struggles, so you can play in that search marketing world where there's tons of volume and tons of opportunity. So that's kind of the mini case for support, I guess, around the Google Ad Grant and driving traffic to your site. So specifics on the Google Ad Grant. So some people have never heard of it, so I do want to kind of go through this, because I think one of the key actions out of this is, if you don't have one, to at least get one. It's not that complicated. It doesn't take that much time. We can do it for you as well, but everyone should be able to get it and access it. So there's a few kind of simple steps. You can Google the Google Ad Grant and you'll get there, or there's the URL. Again, these slides will come out later, and it's got some links and resources to help you as you go through it. But one of the key things on the Google Ad Grant, so I said that there's $10,000 of advertising that's available each and every month. One is it doesn't roll over. So if and when you get it, if you don't spend it, it doesn't go into the next month. It's just up to $10,000 each month. And the big thing down here is that it's limited to $2 on a cost per click basis. So we'll talk about why ads show up in this thing called quality score, but cost per click is a really important metric, or is a really important factor in that. And Google limits you to $2, which causes some struggles to say have your ads show up for really important keywords if you're just kind of using it free. So that's a key thing to remember here as you get into it, but it's a fantastic program, and we think kind of all nonprofits should apply. So the first thing is to figure out if you're eligible, then apply, then you enroll, and then you kind of sit and wait. So a couple things on being eligible. As of right now, government, hospital, and schools are not eligible. So Google has a Google for Education program, which is why a lot of schools won't qualify. So philanthropic arm, so a foundation tied to a higher ed or hospital, could qualify, but universities themselves or schools themselves typically won't qualify, and they won't even review the case. We just had that happen to us last week. We're trying to find ways around it, but there aren't really any. Otherwise, kind of all 501c3s registered with the IRS should qualify and be a part of the program. And in addition to the Ad Grant, they have other things like Google Apps and YouTube for nonprofits. There's other programs within Google for nonprofits, so there's other things that you can look into, but we're just talking about the Ad Grant today. And then in Canada, the neat thing is this program extends not just to registered charities, but actual to nonprofits as well. So in Canada, it's actually a different designation. They're different types of organizations, but it can apply to both. So you can see if you're eligible. Again, most organizations are eligible with those few caveats. The application process is actually quite simple and straightforward. You just need your EIN here in the States. In Canada, you need to be registered with TechSoup, and you get a validation token. Make sure you're not a robot by filling out that CAPTCHA form. And then you just fill in some simple information. And the only chance you have to actually talk a little bit about yourself or make your case is that mission statement. Otherwise, everything else is very straightforward. But then you'll get accepted into the program fairly quickly. And this seems like a minor thing, but it happens all the time. We suggest when you go through this process, put your browser in incognito mode and actually create a brand new Gmail account. So don't try to use your current account. Create a brand new Gmail account. We often call it organization name gg@gmail with a password that we can kind of remember. It just makes the whole application process a lot easier and smoother because then you're not jumping in and out. And if you do it under the wrong account, you're going to have to do it all over again. We did a workshop maybe 2 months ago where we were applying with people, and I'd say 90% of the people that struggle, it's because they're not in incognito. So just want to call it out there if you go on the application. So after you apply, then you're accepted in nonprofits, then you need to enroll in the Google Ad Grants. And one of the decisions you need to make early on is, do you want to go Ad Grants Express or full-on Ad Grants? This sounds really good on the left, Ad Grants Express, where limited time to manage your Ad Grants account. Oh, yeah, of course you do. But you really want to do the main program, and that's for a few reasons. A lot of Google's statistics and algorithms and measurements and even a lot of the research and articles that you'll find in the world are not based on the Google Ad Grant $2 limitation. So a lot of their kind of automated algorithms don't work very well because of that $2 cost per click barrier. So hopefully that'll make more sense as we get into it. But you really want to choose that manage every aspect. It sounds like a lot of work, but the AdWords Express really isn't the best fit in our view for nonprofits. You can start with one and convert to the other. We just did that last week with a client. But you want to choose the manage ad grant yourself. Then I won't go through all these steps. The only thing to highlight here is they have some very specific requirements of how you need to set up your account when you enroll. Like, you don't put in billing information. You make sure it's $2 or less. You choose a budget of $3.29 or less per day. It has to be search network only. Some of these things. And this, they have a link that's kind of create your account guide, which has buttons and all the information. And that's probably the second biggest mistake, other than incognito, that people make, is they don't follow this guide directly. If you follow it, it's dead easy. But you have to follow it exactly, for real. If you do incognito and you follow that guide, you're fine. Again, it sounds simple, but it's an easy mistake to make. So once you go through that process, then it's taking about 5 days or even more right now, depending on volume, to figure out if you've been accepted. And if you're not accepted into the Ad Grant program, you'll get an email that will tell you why, and then you can kind of reapply. Sometimes you have to wait a few weeks, but it's not like you applied once, you were denied, and you lost your chance forever. And then there is something called Google Grants Pro, and that's where instead of getting $10,000 a month, you can get up to $40,000 a month to spend on search advertising. And they're actually not accepting clients into that right now. So we have a couple clients, or one client that was able to get in before. And this is kind of what it looks like just with the Google Ad Grant, where they were spending their $10,000 a month. And then once we got them Pro, here's that jump. So blue is total sessions. The orange bar here is the Google Ad Grant traffic. So you can see that the Google Ad Grant is driving a ton of their traffic. And then the graph below, it's just comparing year over year, where they've seen, I think it's about 300% growth in traffic year over year, largely because of the Ad Grant and then the Ad Grant Pro. So some things to keep in mind if you're interested in Grants Pro, if you're kind of already using, or maybe you have a large organization, or you produce a lot of content, or you think you could be a good fit. There is some criteria to qualify, and one of them is you have to track conversions. That's something that a lot of organizations have a hard time doing. You have to show that traffic is leading to something, and we'll talk about conversions and metrics in a bit. You have to spend over that $9,900 twice in the last 6 months. You have to have a click-through rate of over 1%. We'll talk about click-through rate. and then be in good standing, and you need to be checking in every 2 weeks or so. One thing I didn't mention about the Google Ad Grant, if you get it, you just have to log in and make a change every 90 days or else you'll lose your application. So same thing back to one of the key actions. If you don't have it, get it and just set a reminder to check in every 60, 90 days. That way you won't lose it. So even if you don't have plans to maximize it right now, I do strongly encourage people to get it. All right, so that's Google Grants and Grants Pro. Happy to answer more questions as we get into it. So then, before we get into maybe the strategy and actually how to run it, just a little bit of AdWords basics here to show how it works. This is kind of the cascading structure of AdWords, where you have campaigns, and this is where you set budgets and the high-level campaign settings, and then you have ad groups. So these are kind of like sub-themes within that campaign. This is where you put together related keywords and search terms. So if volunteer in Vancouver, volunteering in Vancouver, I want to volunteer in Vancouver, those are related keywords that would form an ad group that would be something like volunteer in Vancouver. And then from there you would create an ad, and then you should be running at least 2 ads. We'll talk about some of that. So then there's ads that are part of ad groups, which are part of campaigns. And then when you go in to look at your account, you can look at the campaign level, the ad group level, the ad level, and then also by keywords. But this is the kind of hierarchy or structure. And we'll talk about the kind of 6 main campaigns that we think nonprofits need to build, and a few tips on the ad groups and ads. But this is that hierarchy as we reference it as we go. This is kind of what it looks like if it gets going. So there's a volunteer campaign on the left and a fundraising campaign on the right. There again, you have those keywords which feed into ads. You can have a ton of different ad groups part of a campaign, and you can have, they suggest 10 to 20 keywords part of an ad group. But you should really only have 1 or 2 ads for that group. We suggest 2, and then you kind of rotate a third in as you test. But keywords tied to ad groups have ads, and then your ads point to your landing page, which we'll get to in a second. Sorry if this is like way too much. I'm just trying to find the right balance of explaining AdWords before we get into kind of the strategy. So here's some types of keywords, and with some examples on the left of kind of what they look like and kind of how they show up on the right. So keywords are hugely important when you get into actually setting up and running your campaigns. But these are the 5 different types where broad match. So that's if you put anything related to water or charity, for example, then your ad may show up. It's the biggest and broadest catch-all. Then you have things like broad match modifier. So that shows only when your word is included. So broad match will even include like misspellings and stuff like that. So broad match modifier includes keywords or slight variations, but not necessarily misspellings. Phrase match will actually match the exact phrase that someone's searching. If that's your keyword, they'll line those up. The exact match, so that's the exact same spelling, no other words, no spaces, anything like that. And then negative match, so these are things that you don't want to show up. So for example, in this scenario, if you want like cooler or park, those things don't relate to, say, charity water or donations. So you would not want those words to show your ads, because then you're quote-unquote wasting money. We'll talk about how to use these best with campaigns and in the nonprofit ad grant program. But these are the different types of keywords that we'll reference and that you'll see as you get into it. So one thing that is key, so A, get your grant, and then 2, get started. We'll talk about that as being one of the key strategies, but it can be a little overwhelming. But if all you do is you get your grant, you run a campaign, you have an ad group and an ad, and you just do broad match, that's great, because our belief is that the value and data and experience is hugely important, and then you can always optimize and learn and grow as you go. But if you don't start, you don't get that data. And then the ads point to a specific landing page, and we actually won't spend a ton of time on landing page, just a couple tips, but Next After has some great resources and other webinars on how to create high converting landing pages. But that's another huge piece of the traffic equation, right? If traffic times conversion rate times average gift equals revenue, you can throw a ton of traffic, but if the page is brutal or doesn't convert very well, then it's going to impact the ROI or the effect that the ads can have. So all these pieces need to work together. So that's the kind of quick intro into AdWords and how they work in terms of structure and keywords and pointing to pages. And then this is the question that we always get asked. So how do the ads show, when and why? And here's the somewhat simple, somewhat extremely complicated, no one really knows how Google's algorithm works answer. But it's based on this thing called quality score. So quality score is this combination of a kind of relevance and user experience. And in that relevance equation is where you'll find things like, is your ad and landing page and the thing that people are searching for, do they all make sense? So if you want to get a donation from someone who is searching for Best Buy electronics, that's not very relevant to what they're searching for. So you're going to have a very low quality score. So the way to overcome quality score is typically to actually bid very high. So people can bid on that click with $100 per click. And even though it's not very relevant, they could still show up just because they're paying for it. So the key here is quality score is a combination of these types of things. Your click-through rate, that's kind of an engagement metric. It's one of the best metrics to gather data from in terms of what people are resonating with. So even if they're not converting, you can at least see what ads people click on. So click-through rate's important. The relevance of each keyword to its ad group, talked about that a little bit. Landing page quality and relevance, again, the ad and the landing page need to work together. Relevance of your ad text, all those things should be working together. And historical AdWords account performance. So this is actually a key piece for us as well, because our strategy, which we'll talk about, is basically high volume in the early days to get data to learn from, and then you trim down. The downside of the high volume in the Google Ad Grant is that it can cause your performance metrics, like click-through rate and some of these things, to kind of go down. So you need to keep an eye on that. But this is kind of how ads show. So in theory, when you type in a search term or trigger some keywords, the ads that have the highest quality score, combination of these factors, is what shows up. All right, so setting it up and kind of putting it to work. So I mentioned a few of these different kind of high-level strategies and differences for using the Google Ad Grant. But here they are listed. So that first one, again, start and spend. One of the biggest differences, we were just talking to a potential client, and they had an agency come in and do this tons of pro bono work, and they're a great agency. They know what they're doing. They set up all the AdWords, and I asked, how much are you spending per month? And they said about $80. And that's because the ad agency didn't factor into consideration that they can only bid $2. So bidding on high-level keywords and all this other stuff didn't make sense for this organization. One way to overcome that is just volume. Because Google is offering this kind of quote-unquote free money, you can overcome a lot of the deficiencies and limitations by pure volume, especially in the early days, so that you can figure out what works. So by starting and spending, those dollars equal learning. So whether it's copy that helps people click through, you can use those learnings and put them in, say, emails and subject lines back into your landing pages or donate pages. I'll show you an example of some of that. A big thing, again, is a lot of people aren't naturally searching for especially donations, so that's tricky. Own your brand. We suggest having a branded campaign for all clients, and that's basically where you just have keywords that are your own organization. There's a lot of organizations that maybe aren't named very well, or a lot of organizations use the same words like hope and things like that. So using the paid strategy to own your own brand is highly recommended and smart to make sure that you're showing up. Focusing on these other attributes like emails and volunteers and form completes are important, as it can lead to donations down the road, but it's more in line with what people are actually searching for. And think about pop-ups. We use pop-ups a lot. I know it's kind of a dirty word for some people, but in this case, where we're trying to point at high-value content, it's probably not a donate page, but we don't want people to just come and leave. Using a pop-up can help someone go from, oh, this is really interesting, they don't have to scroll all the way down to find your subscribe to newsletter button or something like that. And we've seen quite a bit of success using pop-ups, and we'll show you one example. So those are kind of a few of the kind of high-level strategies. But again, if all you walk away from this is, hey, we need an ad grant, and let's focus on volume in the early days, then that's good. I think that's a really good starting point to get going, because your rate of learning will be higher that way, as opposed to spending more time and energy in meetings trying to come up with all the perfect solutions to campaigns and keywords and things like that. So just a few, and we talked about quality score already, but the relevance piece is huge, because your bid will be limited. You have to be more relevant. So we'll talk about that in a second when we get into keywords. This is just that donor funnel again. So this is how we think about the donor funnel. This is from Next After, right, where people are leads, prospects, donors, and they want to do something, and they kind of make their way down. But in reality, in fundraising and marketing, the funnel's kind of upside down. We have to kind of keep pulling people up this funnel, because their natural inclination is maybe not to wake up in the morning again and give money away. And here's an example. So this is using Google's keyword planner in the back end, but we just searched for a very common keyword that people use. We use it too, but most people start with something like this: donate to charity. And what we've highlighted here is average monthly searches, 20, super low. Competition, high. And suggested bid, $10.45, which means you won't be able, you're going to have to be incredibly, incredibly relevant to have any chance to show up based on the $2 restriction in Google Ad Grant. And because there's so many other people trying for this, essentially you never will unless you actually pay for it. So search volume's low, the competition's high, and it's expensive. That's generally not a good keyword and strategy to go after using the Google Ad Grant. And just for comparison's sake, here's Kim Kardashian, 60,000 average monthly searches. To donate to charity, 20, right? This is that upside down funnel struggle that charities have, and how we're kind of starting from behind in the baseball analogy, and how the Google Ad Grant and some of these strategies can kind of help. And here's just an example of a pop-up. And we use two main types of pop-ups. One is when someone's about to leave the website, then something like this will kind of pop up and say, hey, before you go, or do you want to keep in touch, or do you want updates? And then the other one is, it's called the scroll box on the tool we use. The tool we use is SumoMe. But the scroll box is kind of after people have read or scrolled down the page so far, then something can pop up and say, hey, do you want more of this, or would you like some information? So we try to strike the balance between like kind of adding value and obviously showing value, and not annoying people, but also knowing that there's people who really want to sign up for email, but most websites are structured not the best. So pop-ups is kind of a way around that, and can turn engaged traffic into emails, which then once you have an email, you have a better chance of actually turning them into donors from that point forward. All right, so high-level kind of strategies, differences of the Google Ad Grant in terms of our approach focused on volume and revising. And then here's the kind of 5 basic steps to put your Google Ad Grant to work. I was chatting with Nathan here from Next After right before us, saying this is great because this presentation's forced us to kind of document a bit of our methodology. And so this is kind of evolving, but this is where we're at right now in terms of steps in the process and kind of what it looks like. And the first one, of course, is goals and metrics. And so we like to set goals that are kind of aspirational and not really measurable, but then you have objectives that are a part of it, and those are very measurable. And then you have to set up your tracking. So how do you know, or how will you be able to measure? So an example of that would be something like this. Goal, we want to get more donors. Objectives, get X new email signups per month, get Y new donors per month. Then you could set up the tracking through conversions or goals. So goals and analytics, if you set those up, then they can be automatically converted into conversions in AdWords. But you can also set up conversions, especially or just in AdWords itself. So you set up the tracking so you can see, well, how many people actually did sign up from our ads, or how many people actually did donate from these ads. So that's the kind of goals to metrics, goals to objectives to tracking setup that we like to follow. Start tracking what you can and add depth as you go. This is another problem or challenge. People go, oh, well, because of our tool, whether it's a third-party donation tool or you don't have thank you pages set up, or some people have a web agency that manages their site and they don't have access to code, there's a lot of reasons why you may not be able to set up tracking right away. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't start and try to figure out what you can measure. So for some churches that we're working with, they're just trying to measure things like how many more phone calls do we get in the office. It's not a direct correlation that our ads are equaling more phone calls, but there's definitely an assumption in there, but the logic is sound. If more people are coming to the website and finding out about us and our calls are going up, then maybe these ads are working. So there's ways that you can track and start trying to see, hey, is this working or is this not, while trying to get those other more in-depth specific pieces in place. If you do get those pieces in place, so it's primarily analytics, AdWords, and then say e-commerce in the Google world of things, because they're all Google products, they all talk together very nicely. And I know NextAfter has some cool tools and resources on how to calculate this stuff. But then you can actually see which ads and campaigns are leading to email signups and donations. You can see traffic sources that are leading to higher conversion rates or lower conversion rates. There's tons and tons and tons of data, almost too much data to wade through, especially big AdWords accounts. But you can at least see the result as opposed to, oh, traffic's up, maybe it's leading to more donations. You can actually say, oh, traffic is up, it is leading to more donations, and it's because of this campaign or this ad. That's what connecting these things in the tracking system works. Yeah, we'll move on here because I want to make sure we get through everything. But the tracking, happy to talk more about conversion tracking, how it works. So campaign structure, again, here in that hierarchy, it's the highest level and it kind of sets the theme, so more or less for the ad groups in ed. These are the 6 campaigns that we think basically everyone can or should make. One kind of rule of thumb when you're thinking about campaigns is they can kind of fit those header navigations on your website. That's a loose correlation in terms of what types of campaigns should you be building. So there's that branded campaign, and it can often point to things like landing pages like About Us or Mission, Vision, Values, or you can point to the homepage. It's not always recommended, but that's where you're trying to own your brand. So if someone searches your organization name, then you want to show up. That's what a branded campaign is focused on. Donate, give. Again, it's tough to get people right from search all the way to donation. It does happen. We've had a client where their Google AdWords accounts for about 13%, 15% of all online donations. We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for them, but it's not an insignificant amount. So it does happen, and it should absolutely be a campaign and a focus because there are people searching for it, but like we said, not nearly as many as Kim Kardashian. News and stories. This is kind of an undervalued one, I think. Organizations possess fantastic stories and content, and content is great for tying into search, both SEO and the pay-per-click. And so the one client that we've had that has seen a huge growth and is Google Grants Pro, they produce tons of blog content, and it's related around news and stories. And so we create campaigns just for news and stories, and I'll show some example of kind of top posts. But that's a lot of times people are looking for that, or they're interested in that type of stuff. Programs Learn More. This is a bit more on the service delivery side. So we have a client that does suicide prevention, right? So people are maybe looking for help or how to find resources. There's a big value on service provision and helping people in need find the resources that they need. And you can target campaigns to be geographic. So when we search for volunteers in Vancouver, for example, we're only showing those ads to people in British Columbia because no one from Ontario is going to volunteer. Or if you're based in Charleston, South Carolina, why would you want someone from Seattle kind of showing up to your volunteer page? Programs Learn More. Get involved, volunteer. Again, hugely important. A lot of people do search for volunteer opportunities. You can have possibly things like advocacy and fundraising in there as well. And then on a campaign, so if you have a year-end campaign or a spring campaign, we suggest creating those as campaigns themselves. Paid advertising, so like Facebook advertising, is generally better for time-sensitive campaigns because of search volumes, and by the time you get it up and running and people searching for content, it kind of dies down. So if you have more like year-long campaigns or larger campaigns, then that's a better fit. If it's a shorter campaign, getting value out of the Google Ad Grant is going to be a little tricky. But these we think are like the 6 kind of campaigns to build from, or at least as a starting point. So from there you go into keywords research, and so these are the 3 kind of quick sources. Again, we're talking about the 80-20. You can do keyword research all day long, night and day. Bunch of different tools to find all kinds of different keywords. But again, I think these 3 areas will get you started, and then you can look at your own data and information and try to see, oh, this keyword is good or bad, or this is a terrible keyword, we should remove it. So start with keywords that you can think of, right? So you can just write down on a piece of paper in a Google document a bunch of keywords that you think apply to your organization and your website and what people will search for. It's a good starting point. You can look through your website, look at a lot of the headlines that you have written on your different pages. Those are often decent places to have keywords or to pull keywords from. And then Google has a keywords planner tool where you can put in your website or a landing page that you want to point people to, and it will make some suggestions for you in terms of, here's some keyword ideas. And then you can even go further detail, look at search volume, just like that Kim Kardashian charity donate example if you want to. But even if you just put in a page, Google will tell you some suggestions and you can easily add them to your campaigns. So that's a starting point for keywords and research. For our kind of general information campaigns, so those would be things like, news and stories, programs, learn more, potentially campaigns where we're interested in, like, hey, we'll take anyone who wants to read a blog post on this cool story. Broad match and broad match modifier are probably good ways to set up those types of campaigns. Again, we often start with almost all broad match and broad match modifier because we're just trying to increase the spend as fast as we can, get as much data, and then we'll add complexity as we go. Until budget becomes an issue, then it's an issue. You don't have to worry about it. But these are the best kind of fits in our experience: broad match modifier for those kind of general news and stories. For the branded, get involved, volunteer, donate stuff, phrase match and exact match are better. If you're trying to kind of grab donate to charity traffic again to your page, it's not a very great strategy. But where you might be able to search pop up is if you get more specific with the phrase match. So if it's donate to charity in Charleston, South Carolina, or something like that, now you actually have a much higher chance to show up because there won't be a lot of search volume, but there also won't be a lot of bids. So if you're trying to get into donations, being a bit more specific with phrase match and exact match. And same thing with your brand. If it's your organization, so First United is the Vancouver client we referenced, you want to use that information in site. Negative match. Once you start getting data, you can add these things that you don't want to have. So the keyword planner is fantastic. So we're going to move a little quicker here, just checking the time. Here's an example of how ad groups work. So say if it's news stories, you could have blogs or annual report, a newsletter, or stories. Those could be ad groups. Or you could circle them around, say, content areas, so geographic regions. So stories about Vancouver, stories about Africa, stories about South America. The key idea here is that the keywords in the ad groups need to be on related themes. Here's an example of content and stories that we had for our clients. So Justin Trudeau, who's Prime Minister, Christian faith, focused on the Bible, Christian faith, assisted death, focus on physicians. So these are ad groups or sub-themes. Writing ads, a couple quick tips here. Keep capitalization in the title, and then using punctuation and kind of numbers in the description is often recommended. And again, there's tools that will show you how to best write these ads and make some recommendations. Running ads can be great for tests. So here's a test that we just ran. So there's not a lot of data, but just changing the headline with Vancouver needs you versus homeless in Vancouver. You can kind of see which copy or content works better or not. And then you point to these landing pages. And this is where it's a little chicken egg, because you can see this headline originally was volunteer, but we saw a lot of church traffic, volunteer in Vancouver. So we changed the headline. We added this keyword into the body as well. And then you obviously want to make sure that there's a call to action and a form on a page like this. Not saying this is the best landing page in the world, but we're making it work for us as much as we can. And here's that research. So we looked at the highest performing ads, and 2 of them had volunteer in Vancouver. We looked at the keywords, and then we said we should start using volunteer in Vancouver more specifically into our pages. So create ads based on landing pages and then revise based on ad and keyword lessons. conversion heuristic. We'll leave that for the smarter people at Next after than me. And then run, review, revisit. So this is just that concept that we've talked a lot about of kind of in early days you want to maximize spend, get data, and then you can start looking at what are people clicking on, what are people signing up from, what are people donating through. Let's do more of that. What are people not interested in at all? Let's do less of that. So our suggestion again in that 80-20, small to medium-sized nonprofits, you need to run for at least a month to get data. You can optimize it. Even just once a month is okay. Obviously more is better. And then you do major changes once a quarter. So same thing. For sure, if you want to get the other 20%, you need to optimize more regularly and run tests. But if you just want to start getting, solving that problem of traffic, if you're getting a month of data, doing some changes once a month, adding major campaigns and changes once a quarter, that'll put you down on the right track. And then here's just one example again. Here's that Volunteer Vancouver. We saw that the volunteer campaign was getting us the most email signups. Then we looked at the keywords here in Volunteer Vancouver back and forth. So those are the keywords that we want to start using in copy and ads that we showed the landing page and those changes earlier. And then here's another example of here's this test that we're running, and now we're building a donate page for monthly giving. And we're hoping, our assumption is that the Vancouver headline here will lead to more click-through rates, which means then we'll build it in the landing page, and then we'll obviously test there. But because there's so much volume and activity that you can access, the testing environment in Google AdWords is fantastic. It provides a lot of opportunity. So that's really, really fast, the 151 level. A couple of the key highlights here. Again, get started. Almost everyone can apply and be accepted. Start tracking what you can and focus on volume to overcome some of the limitations. And then you can revise from there, once a month, every other week, but just you can start making tweaks as you go. It's the getting started part that often people have hurdles. So whether it's getting the grant or setting things up, don't let it be a barrier. It's not that complicated, and you can get going and take advantage of that. So good luck trying to bring the tying run to the plate. We can talk a bit more about Nonprofit Supply Co. We'll have an offer if you want to work with us. We'll give you a month for free. And I think we maybe have a few minutes for questions if we didn't go way too fast for people.
Oh, yeah, great job, Brady. Thank you so much for that information. We do have a bunch of questions. If you have questions, put them in the questions pane down in the bottom right of that GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get them answered. We'll follow up via email. Want to ask you a few of these. First, someone said, we cannot devote many additional resources to boosting our ads. Any good tricks to get to the top without paying for it? I know you said you had that $2 pay-per-click maximum. Any hacks you've discovered, Brady, that can help people get to the top?
Yeah, I wish I had more hacks. The closest hack is being more specific on the keyword search term. So, for example, at Volunteer Vancouver, we're lucky that we're showing up in the 3rd spot. But a strategy there would be, instead of just Volunteer Vancouver, our organization is, say, in the social service industry or is in a downtown east side is the region. So instead of trying to bid on Volunteer in Vancouver, we could turn it into, say, a phrase match or even an exact match and say we want to bid on Volunteer in Vancouver's downtown east side. So the search volume will be way down because that's not as frequently as what people search, but there won't be as many people bidding, and it will be really relevant, in theory, to our work. So then when people do search that, we'll be at the very top. So I think those are the two sides of the strategy. One is the kind of, we'll take any traffic we can get in the early days, but then trying to be really, really specific so that you won't get outbid and you'll score a lot higher on the relevancy side of things. It's that middle ground that's that you don't really want to be. You want to move as fast as you can from we'll take anything, get data, to pretty specific. We want to make sure that we can outbid people looking for us.
Gotcha. Can you give a little more background on bidding versus spending?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that AdWords actually works is each kind of keyword is technically like an auction. So there's so many different businesses, companies, nonprofits, in theory, actually like bidding. And so when you set your bid amount, so in Google for nonprofits, it's automatically locked where you can't go above $2. But everyone else can set bids like $10 or $15. And so in that donate to charity example, they're suggesting you bid 10.45 or whatever it was so that you have a chance to show up. And why you would do that is if we spend $10.45 on every click, and then we can turn I'm going to lose my math here, but if we get 10 clicks and we can turn one of them into a donation of a donor that gives $100 and is worth $500 over their lifetime, you can create this ROI where you go, oh, it's worth it for us to actually pay $11 for this bid so that we can show up higher up. So that's actually how the bidding system works. And what the spend is per month is it's just a sum total of your bid amount times clicks. That's how much is spent on each ad, and then it just rolls it up. So how many times people clicked on ads and what you bid for that ad. Most, for us, at least across our clients, most clicks average out to about $1.50. So Google doesn't charge you a penny more than what you need to do to get that bid. So if we can get the highest position or get a click at $1.50, even though we're willing to go up to $2, it will only charge us $1.50. So bid is on a per click basis, and spend is kind of total and for a month.
Cool. Here's another question. I've heard that Google does not search or crawl PDF documents. Is that not true?
It's a good question. Now you're getting into more like straight up SEO nerdery, which is not necessarily my area of expertise. Content in images and content in PDFs are not nearly as accessible, crawlable, searchable, and valuable to Google's algorithms. That is definitely true. It's one of the reasons why we suggest turning like printed newsletters, not just hosted PDFs, but actual landing pages. It's better for people to visit. They can share it, they can donate to it, but it's also good for search strategies, and even if you wanted to point emails there. So that is a SEO strategy, is kind of taking PDFs and turning chunks of them into blog posts or something like that for that reason.
Would you also say that you don't want to link your AdWords ads to PDFs for that reason, because it kind of leads them into a closed environment rather than a website where they can click around and possibly donate or take action?
100%. If you wanted the PDF, then we'd say, you know, like have either like sign up to download the PDF. Now, no one's going to sign up to download your annual report, so you know the value needs to be there in the PDF that you're offering. But absolutely, like an ad should go to a landing page, and then there can be resources on that page. But you definitely don't want to go right into an unfriendly environment like a PDF.
Okay. Here's another question for you. We've got time for a couple more, and then if Brady will send you the list of all the questions, you can respond individually.
Yeah, that'd be great.
One individual said, our website does not have named URLs. It is indexed. So example, each page does not have its own individual URL, maybe # something else. Should we wait to apply for a Google grant until we have our new website with better SEO, or is it worth it to apply now, even if it prevents us from going big at the beginning like you suggested?
So two things. One, definitely apply now, and two, it doesn't actually affect your PPC Google Ad Grant as much, because when you create the ad, you actually get to kind of rename your URL. So you could have a really ugly, you know, long URL or -index, ASP, PHP, whatever, but you can, in the ad, it can show up like /volunteer. So it will look good in the ad, and then they'll click it, and obviously then they'll see the ugly URL. But by that point, it shouldn't be as much of an issue. So I think a lot of that issue is negated by how Google's ads are set up. And then again, like sometimes it can take a little bit of time to get the application through. So definitely apply, and it shouldn't be a barrier on the PPC side of things.
Gotcha. One last question for today, and then we'll follow up via email with the rest of them. This person said, I work for a national organization that is organized down to local chapters. I've had issues applying for the ad grant because they have the same EIN number, and another chapter has already used that EIN number. Is there a way to get around that obstacle?
There may be. So there is a link kind of buried in Google's account creation and application guide, just for associations that have that problem. They share the same EIN of the 501c3, and they have a separate form, or I'm not sure if it's a form or an application. We actually haven't done it. I just know that it exists, and it's created for just that reason. You're going to have to make the argument, though, that every association is different and needs their own account, because obviously they don't want to just be giving 10,000 away that's just being used to point towards the mothership. But there is a way around it, at least in theory. I don't have experience succeeding in that regard, but there is a link out there that I can dig up for you, but it's in their account creation setup process just for that reason.
Great. Well, thank you so much. If you asked a question and Brady didn't get a chance to answer it, we will follow up via email. There were actually a lot of questions on this, but we appreciate you joining so much. Please let us know if we can help you with anything else, and Brady as well. We will follow up with an email that contains the video, links to the resources here, so the slide deck, and any PDFs or links that are necessary there, and we will get that out to you within the next 48 hours. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope this has been helpful, and thank you so much for wanting to do better than the status quo. We admire you, and the work that you're doing is important. I hope you'll have a great afternoon, and we will talk to you soon.